economic position and will probably collapse completely during 2025. But we're seeing Trump using similar tactics against Canada, against Mexico, against China, against Panama, and he has threatened to do the same against the EU.
You just mentioned about the possibility of Russia's collapse this year, and how can you assess the possibility of Russia's collapse not only from an economic point of view, but also from a point of view of Vladimir Putin's regime and his weakness inside Russia, as Reuters reported that Russian allies would like to see the peaceful settlement of the war, because Russia's economy is in a free fall right now, and also the representatives of the big business would like to see a ceasefire deal.
Yeah, Putin is a survivor, so whether Putin and his regime collapses along with the Russian economy, I'm not as certain. I think the Russian economy and Russia's ability to continue to prosecute its war against Ukraine at the levels it has been doing will collapse during 2025 for two reasons. One, the Russian economy is being undermined. The successful attacks that Ukraine is carrying out against Russia's oil processing infrastructure, against other Russian manufacturing capabilities, against Russian airfields, the increase in capability of long-range drones in Ukraine, and the development of domestic ballistic missile capability, long-range ballistic missile capability, is something that I think Ukraine will exploit more and more through 2025. That is having a massive economic impact on Russia. Alongside that economic impact, the shortage of personnel, either to go into the factories and try and increase manufacturing output, or to join the military and to fight in the front line, is causing Putin very, very real political headaches. And again, Russia has relied on a lot of the equipment that it is put to the front line as equipment that they've taken out of long-term storage. They've refurbished it, and they then push it out as operational equipment to the front line. Those long-range storage sites are just about depleted completely, and Russia cannot replace the equipment that it's losing through manufacturing fast enough, and therefore we will see an overall decline. That is why Trump sees threats, economic threats against Putin, as probably the best way of forcing Putin to the negotiating table. I think Ukraine is, if it can hold out from a manpower perspective on the front line, is in a much better position to influence when any discussions would take place by what it's continuing to do with attacks at, in military planning terms, you call it the operational level, interdicting Russia's ability to maintain support for its tactical operations.
Let's cover also another humiliating defeat for Vladimir Putin and also Kim Jong-un. North Korean troops have been pulled off the front lines because of heavy casualties on the ground, according to the New York Times. What is your take on this retreat of North Korean units?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the North Korean troops being pulled back to regroup, to go through potentially further training, trying to integrate any military force that is not from within your own organization into an operational situation without there being a lot of training beforehand and understanding each other's tactics and some form of common language and common doctrine, common tactics, which there isn't between Russia and North Korea, is virtually impossible. And for Russia to try and do that, it shows how desperate they are. North Korea, their troops are very good at the very low level tactical tactics. They know how to fire their weapons accurately. They are quite fit. They know enough about traditional military tactics, from trench warfare to traditional attacks. What they don't know, and they can't put this into perspective, is in an environment where the threat is much more sophisticated, with the FPV drone threat that Ukraine is applying successfully across the battlefield, with the artillery threat that there is. And then as soon as North Korea's troops on the ground start to get broken up. They don't have the non-commissioned officer structure and the officer structure with the ability to react. And therefore, they are effectively just feeding the meat grinder that we keep hearing about. And their casualties have been excessive compared to the numbers of troops that they've put in. So time for them to go back, regroup, rethink their tactics. But I don't think they're going to change. I don't think it's in their psyche to be able to change.
Also, Vladimir Putin faces another humiliation in Syria. Recently, there were talks, according to Reuters, between Russian delegation and the new Syrian government delegation. Russia tried to negotiate to keep its military bases in Syria. However, Russian side has failed to do so because the new Syrian government asked Russia to rebuild trust with Syria throughout compensation, reconstruction, and recovery. And also they asked to give up, to abandon Bashar al-Assad, to bring him back home to Syria. What is your take on such a failure of Russian side to negotiate its military presence in Syria?
This is a major, major humiliation for Vladimir Putin. Effectively, unless he can find somewhere else to base his capability in the Mediterranean, and Libya is a possibility, then he will lose any influence he has across the Mediterranean. And of course, the Mediterranean, his Syrian bases were important as a stopping off point for his military activities into Africa. So this is having a massive geopolitical impact for Vladimir Putin, as well as it being extremely humiliating. He's lost the base for his Mediterranean fleet. He's lost some key hub airports for supporting other operations around the world. He's lost a big training facility that he had with Bashar al-Assad. He hasn't been able to use it for a few years because of the war that was ongoing inside Syria. But he's also lost intelligence collection bases, and it's an area of interest to him. And with all of that, having lost all of that, he will have lost some influence. And his relationship with Iran in particular, but also the way that will play out by perception into China and elsewhere, will not play well for Vladimir Putin. So it is a huge humiliation for him.
So even if he negotiates, reaches agreement with Libya to have military presence there in Libya, from your perspective, it could take years to build new military installations for naval activities there and for Air Force.
Oh, very much so. It takes you 5+ years to build a naval port and to build military airports. And of course, Libya, there's still a lot of Western influence in Libya, so there'll be pressure being put on by the West not to let Russia start to do this. And I don't know of any other countries that may want to partner up with Russia, especially as Russia is beginning to seem very, very weak in what it's doing inside Ukraine. Russia's economy is in a very difficult position, and therefore any promises it might give to pay for facilities, those promises may not be fulfilled in any way, shape or form. And therefore I think Russia is in an increasingly desperate position. This is almost a bigger humiliation for Vladimir Putin than the successful attacks that Ukraine is raining down on Russian oil infrastructure on a daily basis.
Let's also get back to negotiations between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. So US President Donald Trump said that he and Vladimir Putin could soon take significant action toward ending the war in Ukraine. How could this look like, and how could this all can play out?
Well, I think this is Donald Trump telling Vladimir Putin that he's going to take significant action, and Putin is going to agree with him. I don't think Vladimir Putin is necessarily going to agree with him. Donald Trump is approaching things like the businessman that he is. He's not a professional politician. He has been a professional businessman, where the tactics that he's used are bullying tactics. He will try and bid another business rival in a way that he forces them into a position where they haven't got anywhere to maneuver. But then the Russians have got a similar way when it comes to playing poker. Russian oligarchs will sit with the worst hand that you can possibly get in poker and try and bid their way out of having to show their hand and to lose the game and force other people to give up. Trump is doing the same. So effectively, he's